The trajectory and timeline of your shared print project will be distinct and will depend on the size, scope, goals, and urgency of your participant libraries. However, there are 5 basic components or phases for all shared print projects as listed here. This video is designed to offer a summary of the whole process with a focus on project management, scope, special categories, and schedule. In the earliest stages of your planning, we encourage you to review the memoranda of agreement that other shared print projects have used to guide their work. Many are publicly available, including those developed by the Eastern Academic Scholars Trust, often referred to as EAST, the Central Iowa Collaborative Collections Initiative, referred to as CHI-CHI, the Michigan Shared Print Initiative, referred to as MySpy, and the statewide California Electric Library Consortium, known as SCELC. A shared print memorandum of understanding typically incorporates principles and guidelines related to project goals, participation, duration, governance and staffing, financing, retention commitments, access to retained materials, and other operating policies and procedures. We recommend developing an MOU as early in the process as possible. This can happen either prior to or immediately after contracting with SCS for services. The formation of a representative working group is an important next step. This group is typically comprised of collections officers and/or library directors, and depending on the size of the project, could have between 3 and 12 members. A chair is often named to manage logistics and agendas. This group should be prepared to meet on a regular basis throughout the project to make key decisions and recommendations to the wider group. Your SCS liaison will provide direction and will help to facilitate the efforts of this group. The first order of business will be to choose appropriate communication tools. These might include a website or a file sharing platform for published and working documents, a listserv for communicating updates, a WebEx or GoToMeeting platform for hosting meetings, and a survey tool for soliciting feedback from participant libraries. While the scope of the project will have been proposed in the SCS Greenglass contract, it must be confirmed and clearly communicated to members prior to the delivery of catalog extracts. It's critical that all participants understand that the project is focused on circulating print monographs. These categories of material are often excluded from shared print projects, but exceptions can be made for resources cataloged as monographs depending on the priorities of the group. Since reference books, special collections, and e-books are often non-lendable, they are typically left out of the analysis. Government documents, microformats, and maps are often published as serials, which are always excluded from Greenglass projects. For the most part, theses and dissertations are uniquely held, and they are rarely candidates for withdrawal, so are almost always excluded. The working group will be responsible for making recommendations about comparator libraries. Please see our tutorial on this topic and recognize that a single set of comparator groups will be established on behalf of the project as a whole. Individual participant needs and interests should be incorporated into the group's decisions about comparators. Holdings overlap information is collected to determine the relative scarcity of each title in the analysis within a specific geographic region or strata of libraries. Greenglass supports up to 6 comparator groups, which can be dedicated to a single library if desired. As with comparator groups for standalone projects, matters related to preservation of scholarly content and to future access are typically taken into account when configuring comparators. In a shared print project specifically, it may be helpful to consider overlap with non-participating members of your consortium, committed retentions from a previous project, and/or the retention commitments from other shared print projects. Here again, your SCS liaison will shepherd you through this decision-making process, but in the meantime, you may be interested to see the comparisons that were of interest to other shared print projects. Here are the comparator groups established by the second East cohort. Here are the comparator groups established by the Academic Libraries of Indiana, which did not include the 3 biggest research collections in the state. Here are the comparator groups established by the second MySpy project. And here are the comparators established by the first SCELC cohort. There is a special category flag in Greenglass that has been used to advantage by several shared print projects. The flag is used to identify specific categories of books such that they can be segregated for inclusion or exclusion at various points in the process. For example, a group of Australian libraries decided to flag all Chinese, Japanese, and Korean books, as this was an important aspect of their project. In this way, they were easily able to segregate CJK resources and set different thresholds for retention and/or weeding models. The East group flagged titles published by recognized textbook and guidebook imprints, having determined that their member libraries would not want to make long-term retention commitments for these kinds of resources, but would still want them included in the overall analysis. One shared print project flagged titles focused on or published in their state. These books could thereby be protected regardless of any other title level attributes. Another idea might be to flag all items stored in high-density facilities so that they could be the first copies allocated for retention. And yet another idea might be to flag items in special collections locations so they could be treated differently than fully lendable materials housed in open stacks. Shaping the project schedule must be closely coordinated with the SCS team and communicated clearly to all participant libraries. Project success often hinges on a group's ability to maintain momentum throughout the many months of a project. We recommend developing a schedule like the one shown here and then doing all possible to stick to it. An in-person project kickoff meeting is not always possible, but a series of webinars can serve well to bring all participants up to speed and to make sure they understand their own responsibility for keeping the project on track. It's important to emphasize that the project can only proceed at the speed of the slowest library. It's typical that participant libraries would have 3 to 4 weeks to complete their cataloging and data questionnaires and to deliver their item codes and keys. Once those deliveries have been vetted by SCS, participant libraries are usually given 6 to 8 weeks to deliver their catalog extracts. There are separate video tutorials on both of these topics. Once SCS has received all of the library bib, item, and transaction data, it takes approximately 8 weeks for SCS to parse, cleanse, normalize, match, and load it all to Greenglass. Once the data is in Greenglass and available for modeling, groups typically allow 2 to 3 months for experimentation, discussion, surveys, and consensus building on retention models. SCS expects to provide extensive guidance and support during this part of the process. Please see other videos for more information about the Greenglass Model Builder and for models adopted by other groups. When your group comes to agreement about the final retention model, SCS allocates retention candidates and loads them to Greenglass. A 4 to 6 week review period follows, during which libraries are encouraged to reject inappropriate retention candidates and to volunteer additional. These adjustments are reported to SCS before the final reload of Greenglass. At this point, libraries use Greenglass to generate their own list of retention commitments for careful disclosure in local systems and in WorldCat. Project-specific decisions are made with regard to the MARC 583 action note, including the project name, the start and end dates of the retention commitment, and a URL for the project's MOU. Here's an example from the recent SCELC project. In some shared print projects, expectations and instructions for local ILS disclosure have also been specified. Registering these monographic retention commitments in WorldCat is likely to be the last step in the process. Finally, green glass contracts have end dates, which should be clearly communicated to participant libraries.